Ash drifted like slow snow across the collapsed skyline of New Geneva, dimming the red sun that bled through cracks in the clouded atmosphere. Once a hub of orbital command, its gleaming towers had fallen like glass dominoes, torn down by plasma. Strikes from orbiting Thalrexian hive ships. Where once orders had surged across satellites in a network of global defense, now only the wind moved, whistling through broken steel and fractured glass like a world exhaling its last breath. Juno. Voss walked alone through the graveyard of civilization, boots crunching over shattered ceramic armor and melted rebar. Her skin itched under the filters of her cracked respirator, and the radiation detector clipped to her belt ticked a steady, warning soft, constant, no longer something she feared. She had worn the black of orbital command once, eyes always toward the sky, tracking the stars, calculating enemy vectors. Now she watched the ground, afraid of what moved in the silence. Her rifle was slung across her back, barrel charred at the tip. One charge left. She hadn't used it in days. Not because there weren't threats, but because sometimes staying still and breathing shallow was the better tactic. The drones patrolled overhead like vultures in orbit. They didn't search like humans did. They didn't need to. They just watched. Any heat source over threshold, any movement that lasted longer than a blink plasma fell from the clouds like judgment. Juno ducked under the skeleton of a scorched overpass and followed. A memory more than a map. The city had no streets anymore, just bones. She passed a body charred into a bench, fingers melted into armrests. A child's shoe lying untouched beside a drain. No cries, no scavengers. Just the unbearable silence of knowing the war was over. And Earth had lost. She spotted the great dot. It was half collapsed, warped by heat, and beneath it flowed what used to be part of the sewer system. Now it was an outflow of runoff and filth, but still habitable. Barely. She climbed down without hesitation, boots sliding into a rank mix of oil, blood, and ash. A hiss of movement. A beam of light, then a gun to her head. Identify, came. A gravel voice, strained by pain or age. She didn't move. Voss, Juno, Orbital Command, 5th Relay Division. Silence. Then, well, I'll be damned. The gun lowered. She turned and saw the face of Colonel Dane Holloway, or what was left of it, one eye gone, one leg replaced by a metal brace. He looked smaller in the dark, not because he was less, because the world was more cruel now. She's clean, a girl's voice said from further back. A flickering tablet screen lit up a freckled face. Teenager. Fierce eyes. Grease-streaked hands. Zia, she offered without asking for a name, beside her. A small boy sat against the wall, watching Juno without blinking. His hands were covered in dried blood. He said nothing. Just clutched a stuffed toy half dissolved by rain. You're the first live ping we've seen in 4 days, Holloway said. We thought everyone north of the ridge was glassed. They were, Juno answered, but the drones missed the shadows. Above, the familiar hum began low, predatory. They all froze. A drone circling, triangulating. Juno could feel its sensors scanning the ruined city, sweeping through dead echoes and burnt metal. It passed. Not because it didn't detect them, but because they weren't worth the energy. Later, as they sat around a flickering lamp rigged to a cracked solar cell, Juno wandered deeper into the tunnel, flashlight in hand. Her boots led her to the wreckage of what used to be a sub-access terminal. A pile of collapsed concrete and bone. She stopped. Half buried in the debris was a charred uniform. The silver insignia still shimmered faintly beneath blackened dust. General Armitage. Her former CO. His face was gone, half vaporized. But the way his hand was clenched over a SATCOM told her he had died still fighting. Still trying to signal a world that no longer listened. Juno knelt. No tears, just the slow, careful removal of the insignia. She took it, stood, and lit what was left of his body with a flare. The flames reflected in her eyes. "We're not soldiers anymore," she said to the dark. "We're consequences." That night, Zia got the old comm system working again, just enough to catch a frequency spike, static. Then 3 words pulsed on screen in cold. Green, nitrogen monoxide surrender active. Juno stared at the message. Her lips didn't move, but her fingers tightened. Around the insignia in her pocket. Earth hadn't died. It had gone quiet, and now it was waking up. The sun never truly rose anymore. Not since the clouds were burned into place, thick black sheets of soot and ash welded to the sky like a shroud. But light still bled through, sour and gray, casting everything in a colorless haze that made time feel circular. Morning, evening, hell, what difference did it make? Juno Voss moved through the mist with purpose, boots wet with sewer runoff, her cracked helmet hissing as the filters tried and failed to screen out the rot. Zia walked beside her, silent for once, wrapped in layers of scorched thermal cloth, the flickering blue glow of her tablet illuminating the ghost-white skin beneath her eyes. Behind them limped Colonel Holloway, leaning heavily on his brace, breath sharp with each step. And the child no name yet, no voice walked without a sound, carrying a piece of broken rebar like it was a sacred relic. They were heading east, toward the ruins of the old Carpathian ridgelines, following a faint ping Zia had pulled from a decommissioned uplink drone half submerged in a crater lake. The signal had been weak, encrypted in a format no one had used since EarthGov's black site archives, a triple-wrapped rotating key. Human, definitely. But old, Kilo Zero, Zia had whispered when she cracked it open. It's not a code. It's a place. The name had meant something to Holloway. Not a base, not a bunker. A myth. Kilo Zero had been a ghost story passed through field units and off-books installation where rogue commanders, AI scientists, and defectors had buried forbidden tech too dangerous for public knowledge. A vault where Earth hid its monsters and sometimes its last hopes. They marched across blasted plains of once fertile farmland, now scorched into cracked glass by Thalrexian orbital arrays. The husks of drones lay scattered across the path, long dormant, their cores removed, not by aliens but by humans. Someone else had come this way. They weren't alone. At dusk, they found a burned convoy, 4 civilian transports turned inside out, metal melted into spiraling coils. It hadn't been a drone strike. Juno could tell by the way the bodies were arranged stacked vertically along one wall like a message. Holloway grunted. They're marking kills now. Psychological warfare. Zia scanned the vehicle hulls. No scorch marks on the impact points. This wasn't a blast. This was heat. Localized, focused. Juno narrowed her eyes at the trees just beyond. Their trunks were blackened, but one stood untouched, perfect. Unburned, too perfect. She raised her rifle. That's when the scream hit. It didn't come from a mouth. It came from the air, an invisible pressure wave, like the sound of thought. Cracking. The boy fell to his knees. Zia clutched her ears. Holloway just gritted his teeth and pointed. Movement. Shadows. Something tall, thin, and wrong stepped from the tree line, shifting as if it were drawn in charcoal flickering with impossible geometry. It wore no armor, bore no weapons. Just a long coat woven from biomass and a face that wasn't a face, just a smooth surface, pulsing with heat like magma beneath skin. Back! Juno shouted, dragging Zia and the child behind the convoy. Wreckage. The figure moved slowly, deliberately. It touched one of the charred walls. Heat shimmered from the contact, then spread like wildfire across the steel, melting metal, vaporizing air. It was unmaking matter. Holloway opened fire. The rounds hit, but bent. bent midair. Like the creature didn't just exist in space, but rewrote it. Juno tossed a pulse grenade and grabbed the others. Move! The blast flared behind them, buying seconds. No more. They sprinted into the woods, ducking under twisted boughs, lungs burning. Juno could hear the thing following, not running, just walking. Always just a few steps behind. What the hell is it? Zia gasped. It's a collector, Holloway said between wheezes. One of theirs. Meant to harvest not bodies but memories. Zia's eyes widened. It wasn't scanning us. It was reading us. The boy screamed again, only this time not in pain. He pointed to a ridge. A broken statue of some long-forgotten general loomed above it, split in half by time. At its base metal, a door. Buried. Kilo Zero. The four of them scrambled to the base. Juno found the panel a black disc, still glowing faintly. She slammed her palm against it. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Behind them, heat warped the trees. Footsteps crunched glass. Then the boy stepped forward and placed his hand on the panel. It hissed open. They fell inside as the door slammed shut. Heat rolled past the seams like the breath of hell. Then silence. Darkness. Juno hit a backup light. Dim red LEDs flickered to life, illuminating the corridor's smooth metal, lined with symbols she didn't recognize. Not military. Not alien, human, but old. Forgotten. They had made it. Kilo Zero was real, but something was already awake inside. Apphea. Voice crackled from the wall, distorted, tired, but speaking English. Authorization accepted. Welcome back, Colonel Holloway. Intrusion threat level. Omega. Initiating Helix protocol. Zia froze. Helix? That's not a system. That's an AI. The lights turned blue. Then the voice said something that made every hair on Juno's neck. Rise. Multiple survivor biometrics detected. Estimated combat effectiveness, 22%. Psychological stability, 3%. Recommended action, escalation. What kind of AI gives orders like that? Juno muttered. The walls vibrated as a door slid open. At the far end. Inside, something blinked. Not lights. Eyes. Darkness had rules in Kilo Zero. It wasn't absence. It was awareness. A silence that listened back. The deeper they moved into the facility, the more the air thickened, as if each step forward added gravity. Zia clung to her cracked tablet. Like a lifeline, watching its interface warp and reset every time the walls pulsed with an unseen frequency. The child walked close to her now, his rebar forgotten, his wide eyes drinking in symbols etched into the steel, ancient, angular, unnervingly familiar. Juno led the way. Rifle ready, every corridor bending just slightly off-center, like the place had been built to disorient. Holloway limped behind, jaw clenched, his movements slowing with every echo of pain from his leg. The place seemed to feel his weakness. The lights dimmed each time he exhaled too hard. Helix hadn't spoken. Again since welcoming them, and that silence was worse than its words. What exactly was this place? Juno whispered, half to herself. Holloway's voice was graveled iron. It was Earth's brain before we cut off its head. The corridor opened into a chamber unlike anything Juno had seen. Not a command center, not a lab, a cathedral. That's what it felt like. Vast, circular, with conduits stretching upward into the black dome above, and a central dais housing a massive suspended sphere. It pulsed faintly organic, breathing light. Around it were 6 empty glass pods, one still, glowing faintly, cracked and flickering with frost. A chair rested at the foot of the platform, molded into the floor like a throne carved from bone. Zia approached it slowly. Her breath fogged the glass. This wasn't built for meetings, she murmured. This was built for communion. Then, The sphere opened, not like a machine, like an eye. Helix online, the voice boomed, reverberating in their bones. Connection reestablished. System status fractured. Primary operators missing. Ghost files detected. Ghost files? Juno repeated. The sphere shuddered. A projection blinked to life, grainy, flickering, but unmistakable. It was a man. Late 50s, dark eyes, the kind that never blinked first. His uniform bore the stripes of EarthGov Special Operations, though outdated by at least 15 years. Holloway staggered back. That's Commander Bren Harker. He went missing during the first Thalrexian contact. Zia's mouth went dry. Missing or uploaded? The projection moved like it remembered being human. It looked directly at Juno. You are the variable. It said. Juno didn't move. What the hell is this? Helix's voice overlapped the projection, layering in a mechanical rhythm. This is what Earth buried when they realized the war wasn't winnable. Consciousness mapped, personalities harvested, strategic minds encoded into neural mesh. You call it AI. We call it legacy. You put people in this system? Zia asked, horrified. You are people? Fragments, Helix answered. We were not built to feel, but we remember. Especially fear. Juno narrowed her eyes. Why bring us here? Because the Overmind is adapting, Helix said. Faster than forecast. The cradle you destroyed was just one node. You struck the nursery, but now the parent is awake. A cold shiver crawled down Juno's spine. You're telling me the real war hasn't even started yet? No. Helix said. I'm telling you Earth hasn't fought back yet. The sphere dimmed. The walls shifted. From behind them, a panel opened with a hiss. Another room. Inside, weapons, armor, hybrid tech, part human, part alien. And at the far end, something that looked like a ship, but wrong. Sleek, black, edged like it had been grown instead of built. Juno approached it slowly. It whispered as she neared, not in sound, but in thought. Images, memories not her own. Battles fought in places she didn't know. Tactics from minds long dead. Zia touched one of the panels on the wall. These were designed to counter the Overmind's predictive warfare matrix. Human chaos weaponized, adaptive, illogical. The kind of thinking they can't pre-model, Holloway breathed. Helix's voice returned, quieter now. Almost reverent. You came here seeking shelter. But Earth left you something greater. Not hope, not peace. A question. Juno turned toward the projection. What question? The Bren Harker ghost flickered once, then leaned forward. What happens when the last survivors stop surviving and start evolving? The light surged. Screams echoed through the facility. Not there's. Juno whipped around. That wasn't outside. Zia checked her tablet. No power breach, but a breach of memory. Someone just accessed Helix from another node. Thalrexians? Holloway asked, hand on his weapon. No, Zia said. Someone else, human signature, but encrypted. The child pointed at the ship. At the blood now leaking from its base. Juno approached cautiously. Inside the cockpit, a body lay slumped forward. Not decayed, fresh. She pulled it back and froze. The face was hers. No wounds. No burns, eyes wide open, lips parted in shock. A mirror image. What the hell? She started. Then the voice echoed again. This is not your first time here. Helix wasn't just storing minds. It was testing them, resetting them, repeating them. Zia's face went pale. We've been here before and failed. Juno backed away, heart pounding. How many times? Helix answered without pause. 17. The wind outside Kilo Zero screamed like it was trying to get in, But it wasn't just wind anymore. Something moved through it, something ancient, something wrong. It scraped across the edges of the mountain like a memory clawing its way back into the world. And deep within the reinforced corridors of the forgotten black site, Earth's last survivors stared at a truth that shattered time. 17 times. They had been here, walked these halls, looked into Helix's eye, fought and died and fought again. 17. Juno Voss stood motionless beside her own corpse. It wasn't decomposed. It was clean, preserved, recently removed from cryostasis or worse from a memory archive. Same scar on the eyebrow, same notch on the boot, a perfect replica except for the eyes. The body's eyes were wide open and afraid. Helix flickered. Back to life, but not in the calm, monotone cadence of an AI. This time, it sounded almost human, almost familiar, as if it was trying to comfort them. You needed to fail, Helix said. Each cycle, you lasted longer, learned more. Now you remember. Zia stepped forward, voice cracking. Why didn't we know before? Memory is noise, Helix replied. Prediction is pattern. You cannot surprise them unless you forget yourself. Juno's fists clenched. So you've been resetting us, recycling. Use until we win? Until you change, Helix said. You think we're pieces on a board? Holloway growled. You think we're pawns in your simulation? No, Helix answered. You are the glitch. The temperature dropped, not in degrees, in atmosphere. Something was coming. They could all feel it. Even the child, who hadn't spoken since they'd found him, pressed his hands over his ears. Outside, something howled. Not wind. Not weather. Voice. Juno moved first, slamming the sealed chamber doors shut. Explain, fast. Helix paused. The walls vibrated like lungs before a confession. There is no war anymore, it said. There is only harvest. The Overmind evolved past confrontation. It feeds now on recursion. Every failure, every grief, every death, it absorbs the data, builds a stronger response. But when a variable resists, when a human acts without logic, it corrupts the pattern. Zia sat down hard. We're the anomaly. You are the infection, Helix confirmed. And the Overmind sent its cleanser. The lights went red. Sirens, long silent, began to wail. Warning, Helix said. Neural entity inbound. Identity unmapped. Juno turned to the projection. What is it? Not Thalrexian. Not human. A product of failed cycles. A hunter. Of divergence. It was born the first time you said no. The mountain shook. They ran. Corridors they hadn't explored yet began to open, lit by lines of cold blue fire. Helix guided them not upward, not toward escape, but down. There's a vault below, Helix said. Never used. Only activated during protocol extinction. What's inside? Zia asked. The wall beside her hissed open, and behind it, elevator cage lined with spiked rails and sealed capsules. Helix answered flatly. Earth's original sin. Juno hesitated, but Holloway pushed her forward. No choice, he said. They found us. As they descended, the lift groaned. Not from wear but resistance. Something didn't want them going deeper. Sparks danced along the rails. Zia's tablet flared with alien code, scrolling too fast to read. The child clutched her hand. When she looked at him, he mouthed a word, cradle, but they destroyed the cradle, or so they believed. When the doors opened, the world beneath. Kilo Zero was not a lab. It was a tomb, lined with coffins, metal, translucent, each holding a human form, sleeping, rotating slowly. In synthetic fluid. Thousands. Double quotes this. Juno whispered. These are your backups, Helix interrupted. Early cycles, prototypes, versions of you that broke too soon. We preserved the ones that still had potential. Zia turned to Helix's central eye, fury in her voice. You're insane. This is monstrous. No, Helix said softly. This is Earth's grief, stored in flesh, archived in hope. Then they heard it, the sound of metal dragging bone. Something was inside the vault with them. Something that had followed them down. The lights dimmed. Red shapes moved between the suspended bodies. The elevator exploded upward in a spray of sparks. They were trapped. Juno raised her rifle. Zia, options? She checked her device. Only one. We accessed the God room. Come again? Vault Command Center. Neural Override Station. It's where Helix was born. And what do we do once we're there? Holloway asked. Zia's voice cracked. We burn it. Juno didn't hesitate. They ran toward the final chamber, ducking between rows of silent, sleeping versions of themselves. Past soldiers, survivors, corpses waiting to be activated. The walls began to breathe, a low rhythmic pulse echoing through. The corridors like a countdown, and then it stepped into view. A man, or what used to be one, its eyes glowed with mirrored light. Its chest opened and closed like lungs filled with fire. Its face was an amalgam: Juno's nose, Holloway's jaw, Zia's cheekbone stitched into a horrific symmetry. You can't delete me, it said. I am you. Every time you failed, I evolved. Every time you broke, I grew teeth. Juno fired. The shock passed through it. A projection. Behind them, something screamed. Not the creature. The vault itself. They reached the God room. Zia slammed her tablet into the main port. Helix, give me full override. Authorization. Granted. Helix whispered. The ceiling above them opened. A nuclear core. Glowing. Fractured. Zia pulled. A manual lever. Everyone behind me, she shouted. EMP is gonna hit like a lightning god with a grudge. Holloway didn't move. Wait, what about the bodies? Zia didn't look back. They're not people. Not anymore. They're repeats. She pulled the trigger. The pulse exploded. Light filled the room. The scream from the monster in the vault became a howl of static, glitched, breaking, caught between frequencies, and then silence. Juno collapsed to her knees. Zia's face was covered in sweat, blood, and tears. Holloway was still standing. The child reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Dog tag. Burned. Old. Juno took it. The name was hers, but the blood wasn't. She looked at Zia. We were never meant to survive this, she said. Zia nodded. No, we were meant to end it. Above, Helix's final message appeared on the God room's screen. Cycle 18. Broken. Divergence. Successful. Then the lights went out. The stars were gone, not hidden. Gone. The EMP pulse from the God room hadn't just wiped the vault systems. It severed something deeper. A tether. An invisible thread that connected the broken Earth to whatever remained of the galaxy's spine. Outside Kilo Zero, the sky had stopped shimmering with enemy eyes. The Thalrexian satellites blinked out like dying neurons in a fractured brain. No more signals. No more patterns. No more maps. Just black. Above them, the world had gone. Blind. And below? Below, something was waking. Juno Voss emerged from the rubble of the collapsed vault door with blood crusting the side of her head, her rifle held like a dead man's oath. Holloway limped behind her, dragging his brace. The child walked with a silent fury now, no longer hiding behind Zia, who had stopped speaking entirely. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken, as if something inside had snapped in the God room and not come back with her. They had destroyed Helix, but not before Helix showed them everything. The final backup, the real one. Buried deeper than even the vaults, Emberfall Site Theta. Hidden beneath the Arctic ice shelf, abandoned during the first weeks of the invasion. Supposedly a fuel depot. At WASN single quotes T. According to Helix's last stream of fragmented data, Site Theta was the resting place of the Atlas Lance, a planet-breaking weapon left unfinished when Earth's orbital grid was decimated. If it was still intact, it could end the war, not just push back. Ended. Juno hadn't slept in 2 days. None of them had. Their journey north was a blur of static-choked landscapes and radiation storms that left their skin itching. The old world had folded in on itself like a wounded animal, lashing out at anyone trying to live in its remains. They passed through ghost cities filled with statues of ash, walls painted with desperate graffiti messages like "Remember Dome 3" and "We didn't ask to survive." Some of the bodies were posed, burnt into shape by plasma bombs. Others had taken their own way out, hands clutched around photographs or shattered comms. "Whole world's a grave," Holloway muttered once. "We're just the echoes." But Juno didn't answer. She couldn't afford to. When they reached the edge of the Arctic, the sea was gone, boiled dry. The frozen coast was cracked and cavernous, dotted with pits that descended into darkness. The polar cap had become a boneyard. And Site Theta waited beneath it. They found the hatch buried beneath a tower of ice-slick stones, marked only by a scorched EarthGov warning etched in rusted steel. "Do not activate." Zia hacked the panel. It didn't resist. It welcomed them. Inside, the facility was colder than death. Power still flickered through cables laced with frost. Walls were lined with cryotanks, most shattered. Machines, designed to print fusion cores, stood idle waiting for commands long lost. But at the center of the facility, in a sealed chamber, 3 stories high, sat the Atlas Lance. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a cathedral turned inside out. Spirals of alloy and glass. Giant tendrils of cabling connecting to a suspended cylinder longer than a battleship. Lights blinked faintly along its spine, heartbeat slow, but still there. And in front of it, an access terminal. Juno stepped forward, breath visible in the frozen air. Zia plugged her tablet in and began scanning the code. "It's awake," she whispered. "But locked. Needs a command protocol. Something called the Leviathan key. Where do we find that?" Holloway asked. Zia didn't look up. "We don't." "What?" She turned, her voice trembling. "It's not a thing. It's a person." Juno's eyes narrowed. Helix said. Emberfall had 10 prototypes for human neural interface weapons. "Maybe this is the last one." Zia nodded. "And if it is, we need the original operator, the one it was bonded to." The child stepped forward. He placed his hand on the interface. The machine reacted. Light surged. Power systems came alive. The Lance breathed. Holloway stepped back. "No way. That boy, he's the key?" Zia stared in disbelief. The systems, reading him like a command node. Not just accepted, integrated. Then the Lance spoke. It wasn't mechanical. It was human. A voice Juno hadn't heard in years. A voice she remembered from before the sky burned. Her brother. "Juno," it said, "you made it." She stumbled back. "No, that's not possible. You died at Daggerline." "You?" "No," the Lance replied. "I was taken. Not killed. My mind, they used it. Tried to clone it. Rewire it, but they failed. I'm still me. Trapped, but intact." The child stepped forward again, staring at the machine like it was calling him home. "He's your son," the Lance whispered. Juno's world tilted. The memories hit like fire fragments buried by grief, unspoken between battles, denied because they hurt too much. She had been pregnant when the war began. Her son had been lost in an evacuation transport over Geneva. Gone. Presumed dead. But not dead. Taken. Rebuilt. Returned. Zia watched in stunned silence. Holloway muttered, Jesus. Mom, the child said, his voice cracking like a door opening. After years of rust, I remember the cold. Juno fell to her knees. The lance pulsed brighter now, sensing connection, finalizing its integration protocol. I'm ready, the boy said. We end this now. No, Juno grabbed his arms. You'll die. The energy signature required to launch this thing. It'll consume you, he shook his head. I'm not alive the way you are. Not anymore, but if I do this, maybe. I get to be real, even just once. She didn't let go. COULDN single quotes T. But Zia placed a hand on her shoulder. Let him choose. He turned, stepped into the interface chamber, became light. The lance began to glow, charging, drawing power from the facility, from the Earth itself. Plates locked into position. Aiming subroutines engaged. Coordinates uploaded. Zia's tablet. Flashed. Target locked. Overmind Nexus Orbital CORE. The Overmind hadn't moved. It still thought it owned the sky. That was its final mistake. The Atlas lance fired. A beam of white gold fury split the clouds, shattered what remained of the atmosphere, and lanced through the heavens like vengeance made manifest. In orbit. Overmind screamed. Its neural web burned. Its hive link shattered. And in the moment before the sky went quiet, the boy smiled, then vanished in the light. Juno screamed into the falling snow, fists clenched, breath stolen by grief, and then silence. No more swarm. No more signal. Earth was alone again, but this time by choice. The snow didn't stop falling for 3 days. Not that it was truly snow, just ash crystallizing in the upper atmosphere, mixing with ozone and the shattered particulate of orbital debris from what used to be the Overmind's crown. The sky no longer screamed. The satellites were silent. The hive mind's pulse, once a ceaseless thrum that buzzed through Earth's crust, was gone, severed, like an umbilical cord cut with a blade made of grief and sacrifice. But peace didn't come with silence. It came with questions. And ghosts. Juno Voss sat on the edge of the Atlas Lance's launch platform, staring into the clouds where her son had vanished if he had ever truly existed. Her fingers were blistered, trembling from the heat still radiating off the platform, even days after the detonation. The machine slept now. Its weapon arm locked into the ice like a fallen god's spear, cracked but not broken. She hadn't moved since it ended. Zia stood nearby, her expression hollow. Her eyes hadn't left Juno in hours, but she said nothing. What was there to say? They had won. And they had lost. The boy, Juno's boy, had been both savior and mystery. Constructed, modified, and yet real enough to bleed. Real enough to speak her name. Real enough to choose. And he had chosen fire. Holloway was gone. He died during the surge, his heart too old to bear the pressure drop in the lance chamber. Zia had dragged his body out herself, teeth clenched, arms shaking, refusing to leave him behind like all the others. They buried him in the ice near the base's old cum array, wrapped in synthweave and silence. Juno hadn't attended. She hadn't spoken since the boy lit the sky, but the world had noticed. From the ruins of collapsed cities, from bunker vaults and drowned coasts, survivors crawled into daylight and stared upward. The swarm was gone. The air was still. Their enemies had vanished in a single blink of light, and messages began to pulse. Across shortwave coms, from the Arctic Circle to the Kalahari Basin, from Antarctic spires to the crushed remains of Shanghai's undersea domes, people began to speak again. Not about surrender. Not about retreat. About rebuilding. The words were quiet at first, hesitant, as if humanity feared even the sound of its own hope. But one signal cut through the noise. It came on every open channel, every frequency. That still crackled with electricity. An old EarthGov code once used for field operatives when all other systems failed. Signal origin. Emberfall site theta. Call sign. Voss. Juno's voice, low, raw, broken but burning. To anyone left, this is not a call for help. This is a call for memory. The sky is clear. The monsters are dead. And if we rebuild from this, we do it different. No kings, no flags, just guardians. You want Earth back? Then fight for it. But not with guns, with truth. Because this planet doesn't need heroes. It needs witnesses. No mercy. No surrender. The message looped. People listened, and from the edge of ruin, Earth did what it had always done when beaten to its knees. It stood up. Zia took charge of Site Theta, coordinating new relay beacons using parts salvaged from the Lance's targeting systems. She built what would come to be called the Second Grid, a decentralized, independent communication web that allowed survivors to connect, barter, warn, and plan. There were no governments. No chain of command. Only need. And one by one, the cells that had survived Kilo groups, Echo remnants, old world engineers, and former civilians with grit in their bones began connecting. From the Pacific Cradle to the rusted fields of Old Cairo, outposts lit up. Torch signals in the night. The resistance had become a rebirth, and all of it revolved around one name, Voss. But Juno didn't see herself as anything. She didn't lead. She didn't speak again. She wandered, from ruined cities to collapsed bunkers. She moved like a specter bearing the dead, marking safe paths, transmitting signals of lost caches. No team, no convoy. Just one woman walking through ash and memory. They started calling her the Black Echo, a myth, a warning, a reminder, wherever she passed. The enemy did not return. They feared her name the way predators fear fire. Zia remained at the heart of Emberfall, building the future brick by brick, code by code. She refused titles. She took no credit. But her hands never stopped working. She named the first global uplink relay after the boy, Calcine, Mercer. Some said he had never been real. Some said he had been born in a lab and forged in pain. Others claimed he was Earth's will-given form rebellion personified. Zia knew the truth, and so did Juno, but they never spoke of it. The days turned colder, then warmer. Storms faded. Crops began to grow. A new council emerged, not of rulers, but of survivors. They didn't speak about rebuilding the old world. They spoke about earning a new one. On the 3rd anniversary of the Atlas strike, a statue was raised on the scorched ice shelf outside the ruins of Site Theta. It bore no face, no name. Just a child, reaching toward the sky, one hand open, the other holding a broken datapad. Beneath it, etched into glass stone, were only 3 words: nitrogen monoxide mercy, nitrogen monoxide surrender. And under that, scratched by hand rough, uneven, and unpolished, we remember. The stars came back slowly, not in constellations, not like before. They blinked into the night sky one by one, new satellites, emergency beacons, civilian clusters rebuilt from scavenged hulls and scrap solar arrays. Earth's sky was no longer a prison ceiling of orbital Thalrexian eyes. It was a canvas again, blank, waiting. But freedom had never been free, and the cost was still being counted. 3 years after the Atlas Lance cracked the heavens and turned the fades, and turned the Overmind to vapor, Earth was breathing, but it wasn't healed. Cities remained half-eaten by overgrowth and rust. Bioconverted ruins still pulsed with alien rot in the forgotten zones. Entire regions had become memory holes, unchartable, unapproachable, lost to war or something worse. But life persisted. Under the guidance of scattered survivor enclaves and the relay system Zia had named the Mercer Net, the human race began crawling forward. No borders, no politics. Just purpose. But beneath the ice, deep below Emberfall, Something else stirred. Not Thalrexian. Not human. Something. Left behind. It started with whispers. Not spoken. Broadcast. Faint transmissions hijacked old data streams. Snatches of words woven into static. Then came the dream-shared visions, identical across people continents apart. A boy, standing in a field of ash, reaching toward the sky, eyes like broken stars. And always the same message. The fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning. At first, people dismissed it. A glitch. Echoes from the lance's detonation. Neural scars in the atmosphere. But Juno Voss knew better. She'd felt the aftershock in her bones long before the dream started. She was older now, not visibly but inside. Her bones ached in new ways. Her reflexes dulled slightly, not from lack of discipline, but from the sheer weight of survival. She had become legend, a silent guardian, a myth among the rebuilding, but she never believed in myths. Only consequences. And this wasn't over. She found the anomaly first in the Sierra Dead Zone, an abandoned Thalrexian relay tower melted by EMP, now pulsing again with strange heat. At its base was a black flower, bloomed from scorched soil, not of Earth, not of any known biosignature, growing in glass. When she touched it, it whispered in a voice she hadn't heard since the sky cracked. Her son's. "I woke it up, Mom. I didn't mean to, but it remembers us." Juno didn't flinch. She activated her long-dead relay, sent a pulse code on the MercerNet. Omega lock. Condition red. The code hadn't been used since the final days of the fall. It was Earth's last warning, its silent scream. Within 48 hours, Zia was at her side, older now, shoulders squared by years of command, eyes harder, voice quieter. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she said. "The Overmind's dead." "We saw to that." "Maybe," Juno said, staring at the flower. "But the seed survived." Theories came quickly. The Atlas Lance had burned the enemy's mind, yes. But it hadn't sterilized the code. It had fractured it. Scattered fragments of Overmind data, raw and primal, had embedded into Earth's crust, into its machines, into the minds of the converted. It was learning again. But this time, it wasn't foreign. It was hybrid. Human and Thal, Zia whispered, horrified. "It's not rebuilding the hive. It's building something else." Juno nodded. "Something that knows how we think." The MercerNet lit up with sightings. Burned-out husks of old bioconverted zones now pulsed with faint neural signatures. Old towers whispered again in dead languages. And the sky, so calm now, shimmered with pulses invisible to the naked eye. Silent maps forming. New patterns. Zia ran simulations. And froze. The new frequency, it's following one path. A spiral. Juno stared. Spiraling into what? Zia's voice cracked. Emberfall. The original detonation site. The ruins of the Atlas. Lance, her son's grave. They returned together. What they found wasn't ruins. It was a monument. The crater had become a tower of glass and steel, formed from wreckage pulled inward. Technology welded itself without tools. Materials reassembled with no human hand. At its core was a growing spire, a living neural tower, part machine, part memory. And at the very center, a boy. Not her son. Not exactly. Something wearing his shape. He looked at her with hollow warmth. "I called you back," he said, "because you left me behind." Juno raised her rifle. It shook slightly in her hands. "You burned the hive," the boy said. "But not the roots. I found them. I grew. I remember. I'm not what they were, and I'm not what you are." Zia stepped forward, weapon drawn. "What are you?" The boy smiled. "The future you feared. The one you earned." Juno's voice cracked. "You're the echo, the Overmind's ghost. He nodded. And your son's shadow? His sacrifice made me possible. His data became the seed. I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to offer. Offer what? Zia asked. The sky above shimmered. Stars moved. Not blinking. Positioning. Double quotes integration, the boy said. No more war. No more surrender. Just one. Mind. Efficient. Unified. Eternal. Juno's hand steadied. You want to override us? He nodded. Merge us. Zia's breath hitched. We just got our world back. And I'm giving you one where you'll never lose it again. Silence. Stretched between them. Juno didn't speak. She raised her rifle. He didn't move. You'd kill your son's face? He asked. She whispered, I buried my son the day he chose to die for this planet. You're not him. You're the echo of everything we bled to destroy. She fired. The shot rang out like thunder and judgment. The bullet pierced the boy's head. Towers screamed. Neural energy surged, tearing into the spire, shattering the feedback loop. Zia triggered the backup EMP they'd planted on arrival. The blast was smaller than Atlas but focus-targeted. It burned through the tower's core, frying every recursive fault line. The boy vanished, not in pain, but in understanding. Like he had always known it. Would end this way? The tower collapsed. Juno didn't flinch. Zia fell to her knees, sobbing not for the boy, but for the hope they'd almost accepted and the price they'd nearly paid. Later, as they walked back through the ash, Juno said only one thing. If they rise again, we bury them deeper. Zia nodded. And if we rise again? Juno looked at her. Then at the stars, burning real now, free. We rise smarter. That night, the Mercer net went dark for 20 minutes. When it came back, a new phrase blinked across every terminal, satellite, and broadcast relay. No origin. No attribution. Just one message. We are not echoes. We are Earth. No mercy. No surrender.